Welcome back, church family. This is your weekly recap video of the daily Bible reading. This past week, we covered Exodus chapters 1 through 16. And in this recap, we'll see that 400 years have passed from the end of Genesis, and the favorable Pharaoh has died, and the one that has taken his place has chosen to enslave all of God's people because they grew and were so numerous. God, though, hears the cries of his people, and we see how he rescues them at every single turn.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. We're going to try and hit the highlights. So if you think we're taking too long, just turn your video to 2x speed and enjoy. Let's hit the highlights. So we see after they're enslaved, Moses' life is spared as Pharaoh wants all the firstborn killed. And so why does God do that? So just like Joseph, he can use Moses to save all of Israel. And so Moses goes to the wilderness, sees the burning bush, gets sent back, and all that. God then sends the 10 plagues against Egypt. And as Colton pointed out in our comments, he noted that these plagues were signs directly in opposition to the gods of Egypt, showing that we only have one true God. And he is the God of the sun, the land, fertility. He is the King of Kings and all that. So Israel is spared through all the plagues. And then we see Passover. And after Passover, Pharaoh relents and they are released from Egypt. And just as we see earlier in Scripture, Israel plunders Egypt. They get all their gold, all their items, all their things, and were sent out and were rescued through the waters as the armies pressed in on them. God guides and protects them as they begin their wilderness journey. We see God remove Pharaoh and his army, and you'll never see them again. And then we're getting ready to see their journey into the promised land. So that's kind of our recap. What are some of the highlights we can take away from all this?
Yeah, so after the story kind of pauses and they take a breath, God reminds them of things, and he starts telling them of ways to remember throughout all their generations of the ways that God has delivered them. And one statement that stuck out to me was when he said, "I am your healer." And then almost instantly, the people began to grumble against Moses and against God. Because while he did rescue them, and while he is their healer, life was still a challenge. It was still difficult, the path ahead, the journey into the promised land. And they chose to grumble instantly. And instead of sending them back to enslavement or just leaving his people, God immediately responds with grace and provision to keep them alive and to keep them going.
Yeah, so in all of this, God is clearly wanting them to be on his side. And we begin to see this simple instruction from God: obey and be blessed. And not the blessing like abundance, possessions, but blessed by the presence of God.
Yeah.
But we see a tragic trend for the people. They disobey and they suffer. And all of this is pointing us to see God's heart as he begins to give them the law, lead them in the promised land. We see he desires to be with his people forever. A verse that stuck out to me is what's known as that covenant equation, where God says, "I will be their God and they will be my people." We see that in Exodus 6:7 for the first time. And then as God's leading them through the wilderness, we see his heart in them wanting to learn to trust him and trust his protection in the wilderness. In Exodus 13:17 through 18, he tells Moses, hey, you're not going to take the route along the waters. You're not going to take the short way because there's opposition there. And when the people see opposition, they want to go back. So we're going to take a longer way through the wilderness where they can learn to trust me. So all this, it calls the Israelites to obedience and to see God's heart. And we see God's heart is to dwell with us and for us to dwell with him. So church, focus on those truths as we continue to press on in the reading of Exodus. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Sunday.